from another aspect. If happiness involves the achievement of values, let's focus on the word values. It demands values as against whims. In other words, a conviction of the rightness of one's goals and a consequent passion to attain them, as against indulgence in arbitrary pursuits and consequent uncertainty. Or to put it another way, it requires purpose as against drifting. Now, if you know the objectivist ethics, you know that the rational man fulfills this requirement and the irrational man does not. Insofar as he is irrational, what moves him is not the quest for positives, but the avoidance of negatives. If we put it in psychological parlance, not healthy self-assertion, but neurotic defensiveness. Or if we put it in Ayn Rand's words, not motivation by love, but motivation by fear. Now, love in this context means the desire to gain and enjoy a value. Fear means the desire to escape a disvalue. The distinction pertains to a man's primary motive in a given field or undertaking. For example, the man who struggles to create something new in his work, who may, as part of the process, have to fight many obstacles placed in his path, as against the man who wants merely not to get blamed by the boss or not to get fired. The man who seeks a passionate romance with a kindred spirit versus the man who sleeps with anyone because all he wants is not to be left alone. The man who tends to his health in order to be free to live and act versus the hypochondriac obsessed with not being sick. The man who turns to Rachmaninoff for melody and inspiration versus the man who turns to Schoenberg in order not to be passé and not to be too awake. The presidential candidate who has something to say in a TV debate, who wants to make a case to the country and win the argument, versus the candidate who wants only not to make any mistakes on screen and not to lose. Now, in one sense, both of these types of men can be described as purposive, in the sense that they're both acting and functioning and pursuing something as against being inanimate like this briefcase. But they are not both exponents of purpose in the sense in which we talk about the value of purpose. They are not purposive in the moral sense, because morality is defined by reference to the requirements of survival. And the goal of life can't be attained by seeking zeros. And I'll permit myself one more brief quote from Galt's speech. Achieving life is not the equivalent of avoiding death. Existence is not a negation of negatives. Evil, not value, is an absence and a negation. So happiness is not an absence either, nor is it some guilty pleasures that serve merely to lessen anxiety. To put it in the vernacular, it is not what you feel when you stop beating your head against a wall. It is what you feel when you refuse ever to engage in such beating. In other words, when you esteem and protect your head as a matter of principle. Happiness, the reward of life, is an aspect of life. And as such, it too requires values, not merely avoidance, and therefore a functioning mind. And thus the objectivist point that just as you can't achieve self-preservation arbitrarily, but only by means of reason, so you can't achieve happiness arbitrarily, but only by the same method. And in fact, self-preservation and happiness, of course, are not separate issues. They're the one same indivisible fact looked at from two aspects: external action and internal consequence, or call it biological cause and psychological effect, or existence and consciousness. Now I want to state a few words on the question